This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome back to Live Talk with Dr. B. Hill. We will welcome back Dr. Douglas Smith today, and we are going to have an open forum today. So we have a little video, and if you have any questions, definitely use the chat button, and it's up in the upper right-hand corner. So Dr. B, you're muted, Dr. B.
There
You're
we go.
muted.
And thank you very
Good.
much. Hold on one second. I'll be right with you.
Are you there, Dr. Doug Smith? Huh?
Hey, Christy, how are you?
There we
Blessed.
go.
How are
See,
you
now we're
today?
all here.
Good.
Eh,
So, today's kind of an exciting day for me because uh, only recently have we learned how to share graphics, slides on this talk show. Only recently did we learn even how to do a talk show. Uh, I wasn't that many days ago. We were trying to figure out how to do exactly what we're doing right now. We've made some progress there, and we've made a lot of progress on being able to show individual slides. And so today we're going to actually try and play a section of a video, which
And we're
which
excited about that.
we are to the viewers who have an IT background. That may not sound like much of a challenge, but to us, it's a milestone to say the least. So, uh, B, whenever you want to give it a try, we'll give it a try. I'm curious
All
to see.
right. We're going to turn it over to Chrissy and Doug. How about until the video is over, how about we show all three of them and then we'll come back on.
Okay, before
So
you start, B, how am I coming through today? Can you hear me?
you're coming through fine.
Well, that was a weird thing yesterday, and I'm parked in the same parking spot. You can see the same fence in my rearview mirror. I don't understand it. Okay, all right, so, Chrissy, let's take a listen to these videos.
For those of
Okay.
you new to the channel, my name is Dr. B. This is Dr. B Addiction Recovery. It's all things about substance abuse on this channel. We know that benzodiazepine, alcohol, barbiturate withdrawals can get you very sick and potentially be life-threatening. In general, we can say that opiate withdrawals are not life-threatening.
Okay,
Okay. So now I have something to say. What does he mean by this is not life-threatening withdrawal? If it attacks all of your organs and people are dying of heart failure, strokes, heart attacks, they're dying from all kinds of stuff, what is that supposed to mean that it's not harmful to you?
well, B, you got to kind of take a step back and look at who these people are. Um, my view on things is that the psychiatrists and the addiction specialists have been trying for years to be relevant and to be trying for years to be relevant in a public health emergency. And so there was a desire to be the experts. They wanted to be the experts. And there was a huge push, really beginning back in the 90s, for this brain disease model of addiction. That addiction, and we're specifically talking about opioid addiction, that opioid addiction's in your brain, uh, and it's a brain disease, which is uh, interesting because there really wasn't any science to support that. If you look at the history of the science behind the opioids, no, you can go all the way back into the 50s, all the way back into the 60s. So I like to start in 1963 with a study by Gunne, out of Stockholm, Sweden. It's a tough article to find because it's actually not an article, it's a chapter in a book. We had to bird dog that one down. And what Gunn found way back in 1963, as he described what was a dysfunction within the autonomic nervous system, was that after several days of opioid withdrawal, the adrenal glands were depleted in the laboratory mice. They take laboratory mice, get them dependent upon the opioids, put them into withdrawal, and after a few days, the adrenal glands would be depleted. That was 1963. And then you can jump ahead, 1967 with the Cara Brody. We can talk about that study. And then up into the 1990s with the Dell and Chang studies, which we will go over on this program, very instrumental studies. Those studies alone should have prevented OxyContin from being approved. And then all of a sudden, the funding for the research into a dysfunction within the nervous system, it just disappears after 1990, which is coincides with the rise of NIDA, NIDA, National Institute of Drug Abuse. In 1992, NIDA was given control of all funding for the opioids, along with all the other drugs. And NIDA has had two executive directors since 1992, Alan Leshner, Dr. Alan Leshner, and Dr. Nora Volkow, who is Dr. Volkow has been there since 2002, and she's still the executive director today. And these are almost the authors of the brain disease model of addiction. So billions and billions and billions of dollars has been directed by NIDA into research, really trying to prove the brain disease model of addiction when it comes to opioids, and without success, because it's not true. And these guys have done a great job of ignoring some science that is out there.
But can't they, but Doug, can't they see that these people are not craving to get high, but
No,
they're trying to get
no,
well?
no, they don't see it. This is the largest episode of cognitive bias in the history of medicine. They don't see it, and it's kind of a circular logic. They all agree with each other, and imagine they're all facing each other in a circle, talking to each other in a circle, and they all agree. And no, they don't see it. And when you confront them with it, as we have, when you confront them with it, they literally don't see it. What did they call us? They called us pseudoscience. They called us pseudoscience.
Everybody that we have talked to, everyone that we have surveyed, everyone that we have interviewed, the reason why they take the opioid is to keep from getting sick. They don't want to get high. They don't want to get that way. They just don't want to be sick. So I don't understand why don't they talk to their patients either?
It's a question that cannot be answered. Cognitive bias is by the very definition illogical, and you're looking for logical answers in an illogical process, and cognitive bias is just illogical. Dunning-Kruger are my favorite to quote when it comes to the cognitive bias, and what Dunning says about cognitive bias is if you're incompetent, you can't know you're incompetent. Why can't you know you're incompetent? Because you're incompetent. So if you look at Dunning-Kruger angle, these people are incompetent, but they're not able to recognize their own incompetence. Why? Because they're incompetent. So you're looking for competency from the incompetent. So Dr. B, looking for competency in the incompetent, by the very definition, you're not going to get where you want to be. And they feel, Dunning-Kruger went on to say that these people feel buoyed. Love that word, buoyed. These people feel buoyed by something that to them feels like knowledge. Now let's look at those words very carefully. These people feel buoyed. In other words, they feel uplifted. In other words, they feel empowered by something that to them feels like knowledge. I can't find a better description of what is going on today with these psychiatrists and addiction experts. They feel buoyed by something that feels like knowledge. Now, in reality, they have turned their back on the scientific method. And Dr. B, if you want to, we can go into that a little bit today. That would be the 3 slides. Volkow, Douglas, and Watson. We can either look at those today or look at them on another day. But I'm very glad that you were able to play your video, and that's the first time in this show we've ever played a video. That's a milestone for us. We should practically pat ourselves on the back. Nice job, Chrissy. A lot of work went into that. It's not as easy as it looks. When you're really good at
Thanks.
something, it look easy. But B, in that quote, there's another Dr. B. Don't get confused, people. We got two Dr. B's. One we like and one we don't. There's another Dr. B that says opioid withdrawal won't kill you. Opioid withdrawal won't hurt you. And we know that is just absolute garbage.
Nonsense. Mm-hmm.
You know, and not only is it a nonsense garbage statement, that statement has resulted in a lot of people being killed because they've been denied a proper diagnosis and they've been denied a proper treatment.
Yes.
Just a horrendous situation. There's another quote, if I'm not another video. Let's see, just for completeness sake, if we can play that one also. This is another psychiatrist. We found these videos randomly on the internet. This is a Dr. Dominique Sportelli, perhaps the best dressed of the psychiatrists. And again, this is another expert making statements about the dangers of opioid withdrawal. So, Chrissy, when you're ready, let's see if we can play that video.
I don't believe you sent that one to me.
Which
Did
one
you
is
just
that one?
Dominique Sportelli?
That's the two people sitting there in the conversation, the Sportelli.
Ooh, okay. Give me a second to try to do that one. So,
Okay.
yeah. It might take me a minute or two.
We'll give that to you. How about that?
Yeah, because yeah, I think I tried to open up that one and it wouldn't.
Well, if we can't play it, I'm still impressed by the fact that we got the first one, so I'm not feeling badly about that. And of course, if anybody out there has any specific questions or anything, but what we're talking about here is that the overwhelming majority of our people have been diagnosed with opioid addiction, opioid use disorder. That and there's just no science. There's just no science behind the diagnosis of opioid addiction, and without science behind the diagnosis, opioid addiction is nothing more than just a harmful, judgmental label. It's just a label. If you don't have science behind a diagnosis, it's not a diagnosis. Okay, and we can. It doesn't take long to look into what science they quote for opioid addiction. It doesn't take long for that house of cards to come tumbling down. The problem with a inaccurate diagnosis is you've denied the patient an accurate diagnosis, and the problem with an inaccurate diagnosis is that you end up with a inappropriate treatment plan. When you diagnose somebody with opioid addiction, opioid use disorder, and then you give them a treatment plan that's appropriate for opioid addiction, if such a thing existed, you're not giving them the treatment plan for their proper diagnosis. Their proper diagnosis is genetic damage to the OPRM1 gene. We can measure that. We have measured it. We just built a test to do it, prove it. That test is currently undergoing CLIA certification, which means it'll be recognizable in court, which is where we're heading. And then a proper treatment with buprenorphine. When you deny people a proper treatment with buprenorphine and they go into withdrawal, it can be some of them are going to die. Christy, it looks like you made a little progress there on the Dominique Sportelli video. Again, this is a random psychiatrist on the internet. You want to see if it'll play?
Yep, I'm ready.
Let's go.
An important thing to say is that unlike alcohol dependence or unlike benzodiazepine dependence, sedative dependence, opioid withdrawal is not life-threatening in and of itself. So you can withdraw from opiates and just be really miserable and you'll get through it. So the important thing is The withdrawal is not life-threatening. Now, there's this old saying in medical school when you're learning about withdrawal and detox is opiate withdrawal feels like you're going to die, but you're not.
Opioid withdrawal
What
feels
what
like you're.
does in and about mean? They feel in and about. It's not harmful to you. What is in and about supposed to mean?
Don't know, but clearly he's putting out information. And by the way, he gets the vote for the best dressed psychiatrist. Don't know who this guy is. We just found his video on the internet. He's good looking guy, well dressed. Comes across as having an enormous amount of he portrays himself as having an enormous amount of knowledge. But let's go back to the quote from Dunning-Kruger, that these people feel buoyed by something that to them feels like knowledge. And you can see that in this individual. Okay. He feels like he's saying what's true. Now, he's not. Okay. I don't think these people are intentionally lying. I don't want to believe they're intentionally lying. I understand what Dunning-Kruger means when they say that these people feel buoyed by something that to them feels like knowledge. And you can literally hear that in the tone of his voice. The problem is it's not true. And the problem is when you tell people opioid withdrawal is not going to kill you, and now the jails just leave people lying on the floor, and the emergency departments turn people away. Okay, when in reality these people had a loss of control of their organ systems. One of the organ systems they lose control of is the adrenal gland, and that adrenal gland will just flat out kill you. You lose control of your sweat glands, that's uncomfortable. You lose control of your bowels, that's distressing. You lose control of your adrenal gland, and that thing will kill you. And that's the reality. And in fact, Chrissy, we're really going to keep you jumping around today. If you could find the American Heart Association slide, AHA, this slide shows what we believe is going on. And frankly, if we're wrong, sure would love to see another explanation. Um, Dr. B, how do you feel about these people out there saying opioid withdrawal is not dangerous?
I think they're spreading false hope for people who are going through this but wind up dead anyway. I think that they're trying to tell people that, oh, it's all in your head. It's not in their head. It's not in their head. They are sick. They are deathly ill. I have had so many of them say, I thought I was going to die if I did not get something. And if I didn't get my Suboxone, I think I would have died.
Well,
That is,
look at this graph in front of you.
yeah,
That
people are
as you
dying.
as you can see, that's the American Heart Association. Now we've been very careful here, and we're showing the data up to 2019. COVID started in March of 2020. Okay, so we're looking at data before COVID hit, and I think you can very clearly see a massive epidemic, an upswing
Yes,
in cardiovascular deaths that absolutely parallels the opioid crisis.
yes.
Okay,
Actually, if you put the graph of the opioid crisis right next to it, they're running side by side.
they are exactly in parallel. When you um, try to find any information out about this, the only thing you can find is after COVID hit, and the CDC and the public health people, they're saying this is because people didn't have access to their cardiologists. A, I don't believe that, and B, the data we're looking at here is pre-COVID. Okay, this data just got conveniently ignored.
Yeah.
Okay, in order to make a line like that, okay, we're estimating that coming up on almost 3 million people have died to date from an unnecessary cardiovascular catastrophe. Those would be an unnecessary and premature heart attack, an unnecessary and premature stroke, an unnecessary and premature dissection of the aorta, those types of catastrophic cardiovascular events. Now, we're only measuring deaths here. Okay, what you don't know is how many others were injured, how many had a heart attack and survived. Okay, most people that have a heart attack don't die from it. In this graph, we are only looking at deaths. And as you can see on the far right there, okay, there is an upswing in deaths in the United States. So much so that U.S. life expectancy has stalled completely due to cardiovascular deaths. Chrissy, that's another slide we have. We're going to keep you jumping today. There's a slide in there that says U.S. life expectancy. And this is a study from 2020 by Dr. Mehta and his crew. And I like to show the title of the study because it says it all. The title of the study says U.S. life expectancy has stalled, not due to drug overdoses, but due to cardiovascular deaths. Where's the CDC? You know, we're the public health experts. And there you can see the Dr. Mehta, 2020, March 2020. U.S. life expectancy stalls due to cardiovascular disease, not drug deaths. Dr. B, where's the CDC?
I don't know. And if you ask me, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. If these people are dying because they've been in withdrawal, then it has to do with drugs. It doesn't have to do with a drug overdose, but it has to do with not having the drug, going through the withdrawal.
That's exactly it. So, Dr. B, if they go to autopsy or they go to a medical examiner or someone does a drug screen on them, what will they see?
They won't see any drugs in their system because they're in withdrawal.
They won't see any opioids because the person was in withdrawal. Exactly.
That's right.
That's how.
But if they don't have a history on the patient and know the history of what was going on with the patient, they're just ignoring that fact.
They're ignoring the fact that the patient died while they were in withdrawal. Now, we know from our study that 13 out of 15 people had toxic levels of adrenaline, catecholamines. There are 3 adrenalines, 3 catecholamines, norepinephrine, epinephrine, and dopamine, and we saw abnormalities in all 3. And the catecholamines, the adrenalines, are the most powerful organic molecule on the face of the planet. These things will kill you dead. Okay, and frankly, we have submitted our data to the CDC, and frankly, we have submitted our data to the FDA, and pretty much all we've heard so far is crickets. Travis and I are going to Washington, D.C. on Friday, 3 days from now. And we're going to walk the halls of the House and the Senate and talk to anybody, talk to any of the reps any of the senators we can get in front of and show them the data. And I personally think we're going to need to have congressional hearings in both the House and the Senate on this massive failure of the CDC and the FDA. We had hearings on NASA after 7 astronauts died. And what we found, shockingly, was cognitive bias. There was a cognitive bias. Nobody wanted to say that they felt that the O-ring on the booster rocket was going to fail, although they believed internally that it would, but they were scared to say anything. Cognitive bias. NASA's been the go-to example for cognitive bias since the shuttle disaster in what, 86? But looks like NASA's about to be replaced by the FDA and the CDC for most deadly cognitive bias. But that's what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with a mindset that just refuses to see the facts. And you're not going to change their mind. Going to the people who are suffering from cognitive bias and pointing out the facts to them, it's just not going to get you anywhere.
That's why there has to be a lawsuit. That's why there has to be a class action lawsuit, because that's the only way that they're going to listen.
I could not agree more strongly, and this is why we want people to go ahead and get their DNA tested. We know the DNA test is expensive. We've tried to help by setting up the ability to make payments. We know it's expensive. We feel good because we got the price down from $2,500 down to $600. That was a lot of work. That's why we want them to take the DNA test, and we want them to sign up for the class action lawsuit. Travis is the lead plaintiff on the class action lawsuit, but that's the only way we're going to see justice. And in order to do that, we have to have a DNA test that's been CLIA certified. That means it's been registered with the HHS, Department of HHS, and go to court and hold these manufacturers and distributors accountable. Exactly.
It's so sad. It is so sad. And I mean, I applaud you for making it as easy as paying $20 at a time to pay for the lab test, because that makes it easier on people to be able to do that. I know many places it's right up front, the whole amount right up front, or you don't get anything done. But I do applaud you for trying to set up and making it easy for patients to be able to do that. And
It's a
anybody on
class
the outside.
it's a class action lawsuit, and the key word there is class. Okay, class means a group of people who have been harmed in a similar fashion. Okay, in this instance, the harm is to the DNA. So in order to have a jelly tight, ironclad class, we are making it a requirement to have the DNA test done in order to be a part of this class action lawsuit. This is going to make it extremely difficult, actually impossible, for the opioid manufacturers and distributors to escape justice. What do? Argue with a CLIA certified DNA test? Okay, it's not dissimilar to what you see on TV with those shows. Who's the father? Paternity. What do? They do a DNA test. Okay, and then they show the dad the result of the DNA test, and they just dare him to deny that he's the dad, which is now impossible because he got the DNA test.
But that's a simple test. The one that you came up with is very, very complex because it narrows it down to the promoter zone and even, I mean, that's so specialized, that test. It's never been done before.
This test did not exist. It was a very difficult test to build. You're really talking about the difference between doing a basic screen and a test. And we made the decision that to go to court, we're going to do a test that's so sophisticated and so detailed that arguing with the test is an impossibility. If we're going to file a class action lawsuit, we're going to file a class action lawsuit that is going to bring these manufacturers and distributors to their knees for what they've done. This DNA methylation was first discovered in 2009 by Nielsen. It's been discovered and reinforced 2009 by Nielsen, 2011 by Shorbov, 2014 by Walkman, 2018 by Walkman, 2020 by Sandoval Sierra. This is proven science, and frankly, number one, the opioid should not have been put out without doing methylation testing, and number two, once methylation was found scientifically, absolutely no excuse for going ahead and putting out a defective product and not warning people about it. They could have kept the opioids out there and just practice informed consent and just have people sign a consent form that they understood that the opioids will cause or are associated with DNA damage. They didn't do that. And now they got to pay.
You know, I found it very interesting what you had said about the FDA doing very good testing, but didn't go far enough to go ahead and check the myelin, like the electric cord with the metal going through it and then the plastic on the outside. That is so important that was not done at that particular time. And that's how that escaped. And that's how you found out how that escaped.
DNA has two layers, just like a copper wire, an inner layer and an outer layer. The FDA does a world-class job of looking for DNA damage on the inner layer, on the wire, but they don't even make an effort to look for DNA damage on the outer coating. Inexplicable, and that's the origin of this opioid crisis. They put out a product they hadn't fully tested. However, that does not let the opioid manufacturers and distributors off the hook. Okay, they had the responsibility to do their own testing.
Well, after they saw all these people getting sick, I don't understand why they didn't. And if they did, they've gone ahead and put out another product to help with the after effects of the opioids.
There's a book that came out after the outbreak of HIV called "And the Band Played On," and a very powerful, influential book. Uh, it's like deja vu all over again, and the band played on even after the methylation was discovered scientifically. The band played on. The party continued, the dance continued, money was made, and the band played on. Yeah. Now, B, I know you're trying to keep these meetings down to about 30 minutes, and we're at the 30-minute mark.
Yes,
Uh,
I know.
anything that
Chrissy should be coming in any minute and telling us we need to stop.
let's check and see if anybody has any questions or anything.
I don't see any questions, but certainly people are welcome to ask throughout this interval of 30 minutes that are so short. Sometimes it seems like, but that was a lot of information, and I like listening to it because, I think everybody has somebody in their life, whether it's a family member or a friend, that is going through this very same thing. And so it opened up my eyes a lot. I'm not gonna lie. So a lot of information to cover in just 30 minutes.
I did see someone came across and asked me to call them after the meeting, so I will call them. So,
Well, thank you very much for joining us again today, Dr. Doug. So anybody can join us every Monday through Thursday at 12:30 to 1 o'clock every day. So thank you.
See y'all tomorrow.
thank you. All right. And
Bye-bye.
if you'll hold on, Doug, for a minute, and Chrissy, if you'll end that meeting and block it out.